Hello folks! Well, it's a lovely day. I wish the trees would sprout a little soon, but other than that, it's a beautiful day. And a perfect day to tell you all a little story of mine. Now, by the time you see this, all my videos of the first trip, the tour through the heart of Pennsylvania, will have been uploaded already. So you will all have gotten to see the adventure in its entirety. But what if I told you there was something missing? There was something I hid from you all. Now, I try to make my videos as transparent as possible, but I thought it would be best if I told you more of the details, the hidden details of my trip. So think of this as a video to wrap up all the events of my past travels over that span of a week, week and a half. Think of this as sort of like an epilogue video of sorts. So I'll be walking in nature, walking in the woods, after I finish each trip of mine through this grand adventure, and telling you little pieces of information, little stories that you might not have understood from just seeing the general videos that I post. So you'll get the latest scoop on each trip. So yeah, you can tell me if you like this story time type of deal to wrap up the videos that you've seen in the past with my take on what happened, what things were left out of the videos, and a little bit about how I felt about those travels and my philosophy regarding the experiences that I've had. So as I was saying, there's a bit of information that I've kept hidden from all of you. And believe me, it is a crucial bit of information. Something very, very small, but had a complete effect on the entire duration of this first trip we had. Let me put it in a way that is kind of fun to think about in the grand scheme of things. Let's just say that a simple gust of wind changed this entire trip. So to start this story off strong, I'm going to give you all a little bit of pretext, and it might make sense when I tell the later bit of the story. So, as I told you all in the Springtime is Here video, I had been saving up for months for a trailer. Not a huge trailer, just a small enough trailer just to fit me and the essential things that I was going to bring, instead of being able to at most take a trip to 1 or 2 locations in a day and then having to drive back to a home base of sorts. I could go weeks traveling to all these different places in a certain region before having to go back and restock items and do whatever I need to do. Maybe there's a lot better Wi-Fi. But yeah, I was saving up for months, working hard. You know, at the very most I could really only, due to my schedule, upload during a weekend, taking a trip during the weekend, and the next day edit that video. But because of the schedule I had, I couldn't do anything else throughout the rest of the week. So now that you've gotten to see video after video after video in such a short time, it's great to think that first we could really only go to one place per week. And what used to take us 5, 6, 7 weeks at a time to upload the same amount of content, I'd really only need to travel through the course of a week, and I'd still get 5, 6, 7 videos out at once. So the pace of the coverage project is very remarkable as it is. That almost didn't happen though. I was planning on just getting out and traveling as soon as April came along, and that was the plan. Aside from mid-February getting my front bumper of the car I used to travel smashed, and that was devastating enough, but luckily everything was all fixed, and so I was ready to take off. In the week or so before the first trip, I had everything ready. I was gonna stock up on food so that I could cook with the trailer. I made sure I had each place booked. You know, I'm not going to hotels, that's way too expensive. With a trailer, you can't really park in many places for the night unless you want to risk getting a knock on your door at 3 in the morning when you're sleeping. So instead, I planned to have all the campgrounds set up. It seemed like all was set. Or so I thought. You know what? I'm gonna take a little bit of a right turn here, up this hill. You know, we have to take turns in life. I'm taking... almost slipped there. But as I was saying, we take turns in life. I might as well take a turn up this mountain, or this hill, or whatever. Here. That was a bad analogy, but I just thought I would transition into that sort of thing. So I'm walking up this hill. So as I said, I thought all was set. In fact, I wanted to prepare because I never really went camping before. The most I really could do before renewing of our adventures was really just to buy a hotel room for the night, right? So I wanted to prepare because I never had a trailer before and I didn't really know how the facilities worked. So, that's a nice train sound. So I wanted to prepare, and I set up a night where I would go into a campground, make sure I knew what I was doing with the electric and the water, just to cook a meal on that stove, just to make sure everything in the trailer was set for long-term travel. And although that trip was a great success, I learned a lot. I think that's what ultimately caused what I'm about to explain to you. Well, it was the morning of April 1st, 2021. What a great April Fool's joke was played on me. Wait a minute. Hold on, I want to show you this. I guess someone else wanted to camp for a night. So they, I guess, made this. Oh, that's super cool. Anyway, let's get back to the story, and back onto the trail too. So yeah, it was a very cold morning. Way too cold for my liking. There was a blanket of snow on the ground that wasn't there the night before, and there were really strong winds. Luckily, I made it home safely with the trailer. Everything seemed to be in order, but there was one thing I missed. It was way too cold for me to focus on any other thing, so I just wanted to go home. That was it. Wanted to get home, back to a warm place, so I missed something. The next day or so went by, made preparations, and I wanted to learn how to use something I bought. It was a hitch lock. When you're hitching a trailer, I plan to keep it away from where I was in the daytime, so when I would get to go back to the campground, it wasn't stolen. So I wanted to practice a hitch lock. The mechanism was simple enough, but as I was heading to the trailer, I noticed something that just completely devastated me. As I said earlier, there was a gust of wind. It was a very windy morning, and I'm only referring back to that day because that was probably the morning that the event I'm about to tell you happened. I had a temporary license plate on the trailer. It wasn't made of metal like permanent license plates, but you're supposed to put it not only at the back of your car, but the back of any recreational vehicle you have, because when someone's driving, they're not going to see the back of your car when it's hitched to the trailer. They're going to see the back of the trailer. By law, I had to have a license plate of some sort. I had failed to get a permanent license plate, but I thought, you know what, it's going to be fine. The temporary license plate expires all the way in May, so I won't have a problem at all. I didn't even see the temporary license plate at the back of the trailer. What I did see was this. Now, when you're used to seeing that temporary license plate, and it's the day before you depart, you know something's seriously wrong. You know that your trip in its entirety is in dire jeopardy. You know what? I think this is the top of the mountain. I'm gonna head back down. So at that moment, I went from being in the mindset of, can I get this done throughout the whole week? Can I make the most of my trip? Can I actually do this for real now? To a mindset of, oh crap, is this trip even going to happen? Because I sure as heck can't get that thing on the road unless I want to break the law and drive illegally. I wasn't going to do that. So I couldn't drive the trailer, and I had to come to one of two options. Was I going to cancel all my reservations? Was I going to have to delay my trip as far as, I don't know, 2 weeks maybe? Because I tried calling the DMV to see if there was any temporary solution, but I called a little too late. The office closed 30 minutes earlier. So I had to think of something on my own. How am I going to salvage this major problem? So I could have just canceled the trip, waited till end of April to just do it all over again, this time with a permanent plate. Was I going to do that? Or there was this other option. Was I going to live in my car for a week without a stove, without running water, without the comfort of knowing that there's, a good living space for me to drive to different places and feel like I'm comfortable? Because never before had I lived in my car. And I knew it was always possible, but was I really about to undertake this? So I was at this point where I was waiting all winter to drive the thing, to travel, to have a good time, and just as the weather started to get a bit warmer, I couldn't even drive the thing. I couldn't pull it around, and I was limited to what I had before, just a car. But I wasn't going to cancel the trips. I had done too much work, I'd spent a lot of money just to get the reservations booked, and I wasn't going to let that go. It was going to probably be more devastating just to sit at home for a week and a half, thinking about the adventure that could have been. And believe me, I am so glad I made the decision to do the whole trip in my car and in my car alone. The reason I started this channel was because I was dissatisfied with where my life was at. Sure, there was a forward trajectory, but I wasn't satisfied. I wanted to live freely, independently, and adventurously. And right then, right there, I was given the ultimate decision based on what I wanted to have my life. Did I want to take the safe route, stay at home, miss out on the trip just because I didn't want to get out of my comfort zone? Or was I going to take life by the horns and live adventurously, even if it was a bit risky, even if it was a bit out of my comfort zone? I am so glad I took that trip. So I drive that day to the first destination, Hickory Run State Park. And yeah, it was a tolerable temperature for the day. It was nice going out into nature, but then as the sun started to set, it got a lot colder, and it got very cold that night. So there I was, sleeping, very, very cold, in the back of my car, unbelievably uncomfortable. And I thought that night, is this really worth it? I'm uncomfortable, I'm not having a good time. Is it worth it? Turns out it was. What got me through that night was that invigorating feeling of finally being able to be independent, free, and living life adventurously. Sure, I'm going to be uncomfortable, but at least I'm doing what I planned and set out to do. I was accomplishing the goals I set out from months ago, almost a year ago, and that was what let me keep going with the trip and not turn around to go back home. So the next day I was in Harrisburg. It was a fun, lively city. My battery on the camera was getting very low. The first night, I was dumb enough not to use the electricity at the campsite because I thought, oh, it's only for the trailer plugins. The 30 amp, the 50 amp, they're not gonna have a 12 volt. So I get to the campsite, a different campsite this time. I lift open the metal tab, whatever you use to lift the electric post up, and there it was, a 12 volt. So I made do with what I had. I didn't have a 30 amp trailer plug-in. I just used the regular 12 volt. And at that moment, I had this rejuvenation fill up inside me. I felt like this is what it's like to be resourceful. This is what it's like to make do of what you have and adapt. Before I went to Harrisburg, I was at my first campsite and I didn't have a stove. I couldn't cook the food that I wanted to cook. So what was I left to do? I had to take the rations out. I had this big tub of rations. That was gonna be all the food I ate. I wasn't gonna splurge on eating out at restaurants, unless there's something local that I can't get where I live usually. Yeah, I'm going to not pay for restaurants. It's a foolish idea if you want to make the most out of the money that you have and be frugal. So I had my rations and I was left to do only really one thing: eat the canned food that I had, completely raw, uncooked. So what was my dinner that first night? A can of beans and a can of tomatoes. That later on, when I felt like this is my adventure, I have to make the most of it, you know what? I indulged myself in eating the canned food, and I was living for it. I was really happy. This adventure that was supposedly going to be very tough was actually giving me a lot of high spirits. So I went through and traveled through the first couple locations: Hickory Run, Harrisburg, then Gettysburg. Then I came to Lancaster, and I thought, okay, I'm going to just go about in the city, see what I can find, make the most of it, as was my mentality through the first couple days. So I had always planned to go into that Lancaster Central Market. It was on the itinerary, as were a lot of other things. I had always planned to buy the Scrapple in that Lancaster video, that big chunk of meat from the scraps of a pig. I always liked the taste of it, so I knew I was gonna buy it. The problem was, I planned to cook that Scrapple later tonight, or later that night, on the stove I had in my trailer. The problem was, after I bought it, I realized I don't have a trailer. I just have my car. I don't have anything to cook this. how am I gonna get rid of this? I could have just thrown it out, but I didn't want to be wasteful like that. The whole purpose of going on these adventures is to really discover a lot about yourself. And what I wanted was to be resourceful and adaptive, and it just didn't seem like that was sort of in the spirit of my travels, that it was the right thing to just throw it out. So I planned to just give it away. Once I got back to that campground, I would just give it to some family who happened to have the fire pit lit, ready to cook some food. I was willing to just give it to them. I could always buy Scrapple another day. As I got to the campground, I asked a few families, and I'm sure a lot of times they just want to do their own thing in their own family, not talk to strangers. I get that. So I was getting a little irritated though, because I thought it'd be easy to just get rid of just some stupid piece of meat. And I was in the campground, looking like a fool, walking from family to family asking, hey, I got this piece of Scrapple. You know, some people don't even like Scrapple. They think, oh, the nose, the ears of a pig? No, I don't want that. Get that gross piece of meat away from me. Some people like it. I liked it. But it was hard enough just to say, I have this piece of Scrapple. Do you want it? I don't know what to say. It was a bit tough. I was about ready to throw that piece of meat out. Then I took a chance. There was this one guy sitting alone at an adjacent campground from mine. I should have just asked him first. But I approached him. And I said, I have this piece of Scrapple. I see you're having a stove ready. Would you just like to take this off of me? Clearly causing a predicament for me. Not only did the guy not shoo me away like everybody else, he offered to just have me eat it, use his camper stove, and furthermore, that sparked an amazing conversation with this complete stranger who was just friendly enough to meet other strangers, to share stories and exchange just information about each other's lives. Now that's what I really desired most about travel. I wanted to be free, independent, and live adventurously, but I also wanted to meet other people with the same mentality, people who were just free spirits. So we had amazing conversations, not only on that day, but I was also at the campground, that same campground, for a couple days, so almost every night we just chatted and talked about stuff. We even made fun of sort of the people who really weren't all about camping, you know, the types of people who, if there's not cable at the campsite, they complain. So it was a great time. And I don't know how to really come to terms with that. Up until that point, I was enjoying myself, but it seemed like I was a little bit alone in my adventure. As soon as I went to Lancaster, that's when I really fully realized that, oh my gosh, there are other people with the same mindset as well, and my goodness, this person was really interesting. He was an ex-military guy who told stories about his adventures in Germany during the height of the Cold War, the Berlin Wall, and all of that. Not only did he do that, but after his military service, he was a truck driver. So he traveled all around the United States, told me about the different states and the different cultures and what to expect from each region of the country. It was such a great time because he was full of just information, and most of all, he was happily open to just talk about his experiences and ask what I'm doing, and it was just such an interesting experience. That is what I want out of travel. Now obviously everybody else, or most people, they just want to live their lives, don't really want to talk and meet new people, and that's fine. If that's their mentality, that's fair. But through my travels, I'd love to meet people from all different walks of life. I think it comes down to, most of all, that I want to learn from my travels, and so by talking to people from these different walks of life, I can really learn about how society works or certain people work. That's just so fascinating to me. That's a big reason why I'm on this grand adventure. So to have that experience is one thing, but another thing that only after a few days after that day in Lancaster, I really got to appreciate my circumstances. I would have loved nothing more to have my first trip in a nice, comfy trailer. But if I was able to have that trailer, if that windy morning did not occur and that license plate was not torn off, I don't know if I would have met that guy, if I would have been appreciative of all the little things, like a nice shower at a campground, someone offering to let me use a stove to cook some food, just a nice day. The fact that it was sunny on each and every day I traveled, the fact that it wasn't snowing, I was massively appreciative for that. It's the small things that count when you don't really have much. If I was able to have that trailer, I wouldn't have had a need to go around to people asking if they could take my Scrapple away from my hands, cook it for themselves. The fact that I did not have that trailer necessitated the circumstances which led to me meeting that very interesting person. Now I know I'll never meet him again. He's probably doing his own thing, having a great time in life. But the fact that I did get a chance just to meet someone of a similar mindset, a lot wiser and older than I am, but of a very similar mindset, I never would have gotten to meet and talk with and have these interesting conversations with that person. I've only really explained my journey up until Lancaster. After Lancaster, I went to Reading and that was fun. I went to Allentown. That was also very fun. But after Lancaster, I really had such a change of mindset. I was having fun, living for the moment, being resourceful, all that stuff, being appreciative of everything, but I really took in earnest what happened in Lancaster for the rest of my trip, and hopefully for future trips, that you never know what you're going to find, what circumstances you might be in, and what those bad things, or seemingly bad things, might lead to. I think if I'm gonna take something from that, it would be that. I think if I were to take something from this trip, it would probably be that lesson. So next time, if something bad happens to you, or I, or someone else, it looks bad on the surface, but it may lead to wonderful things that, if that didn't happen, you would have never experienced it. And I just find that concept of life circumstances so interesting. I hope you all enjoyed that story, and more stories are sure to come with the new travels and expeditions and adventures we go on. But for now, I'll leave it at that. That Heart of Pennsylvania trip is something I will always remember, because it taught me valuable lessons about how life works. With the coverage project, I intend to be as transparent and open as possible, so alongside my realistic expeditions and travel, I also want to share with you a lot about my own philosophies, about life, and my ideas about circumstances. And so, if you like this story, we could make this sort of thing a continuing series. Basically, after I end my travel, or the trip, I'd just come to a nice, relaxing, natural environment and talk with you all. Just to chit-chat a little, to share my experiences a lot more detailed, to show that, oh, it's not all glamorous. Travel sometimes is very hard and difficult. It's very much a learning experience. So if you want to call it that, we could have it that this is sort of the first episode in a series of epilogue videos detailing the trips and travels we have. And I do like how it's in a natural, relaxing environment where I am free to express my thoughts in a very calm manner. It's a fun thing. So yeah, I'll continue updating you on the fun, exciting details of these trips, as long as I have the money to go on these travels, of course. I guess I'll just end it off here. Oh, yeah, and what a beautiful scene we have here. The edge of a mountain, overlooking some town. So yeah, more travels to come. I will see you at the next location.